presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard. It is Tuesday, October 17th. Appreciate you being here with us. The home of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, high atop the 18th fairway on a moderately chilly day today as fall has set in. It was a high yesterday of 58. Going to get a little bit above that today. Total high of 61 by the time we hit the late afternoons. But hope everyone's having a great day. Great start to your week. Appreciate you being with us as always, as I know you have better things to do. On the program today, we have Mike DeCourcy, of course, Chronic Hoosier, and plenty to talk about with basketball recruiting, college football. Had a game last night. Of course, the baseball playoffs are going on. Kyle Schwarber, I think, had a leadoff home run. And good God, these Phils, man, they are just they've become the Bash Brothers, except for when Oakland had the Bash Brothers of Mark McGuire and Jose Canseco. These guys have quadruplets that can do it. Bryce Harper or Kyle Schwarber or Castellanos, and I'm leaving somebody out. I know there's another guy that's just bashing a hit. I mean, but Bryce Harper's having a hell of a series. I know that was that the first game in their series last night that they took that game in, I believe, with the Diamondbacks, who eradicated the Los Angeles Dodgers, the mighty Los Angeles Dodgers. The Phils seem like they are on a tear to win the World Series. Maybe a little early to tell, but when a team gets on a roll like that in anything, boy, man, they just give them the butter because they are definitely on a roll. Yeah, birthday bash. Who had a Bryce Harper celebrates his birthday with a home run? Yeah, the Phillies win game one of the NLCS, National League Championship Series, as they have just been blowing through these playoffs, like I said. 420-foot first-inning home run blast, and I believe I saw someone tweet that Schwartz had a lead-off home run, so he also contributing. Nick Castellanos gave him a 3-0 lead of the second-inning home run off of Gallen, following the first-inning blast from Kyle Schwarber and Harper. Castellanos' fifth home run in 3 postseason games, tying Reggie Jackson's mark from the 1977 World Series. Let me say that again. That ties Reggie Jackson in 1977. Unfortunately, I remember that when he was playing for the Yankees. Mr. October, I think, didn't he hit 3 in one game? Yes, I know he did, which was crazy. But these Phillies are just destroying the ball, and I cannot ever say the name Castellanos without thinking of you know what. I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. I've enjoyed work, and there's a drive deep into left center field by Castellanos, and that's going to get out of here, and it's a 2-0 lead by the Reds. Just a joke. How's everybody doing? Appreciate everybody jumping on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Of course, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, powered by Andy Moore Honda. Make sure you go there, AndyMooreHonda.com, to get more to your door and the best in new and used vehicles, always with great deals and keeping the rates down there as well, I've noticed. Fred jumping on, of course, from Easton, Kent, Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Kevin down in Jeffersonville, the southern part of Indiana, down in my neck of the lip. Little Caddyshack reference. Jamie from Grand Rapids. Doug jumping on. Kent asking, does Dexter Williams start Saturday against Rutgers? We'll get into that. John Half, our buddy from just straight across from Southport. Justin, he had a bad pick'ems week. We're going to get into that in a minute. Well, bad for you is good for most people. The truth is on and with us. How are you, sir? We appreciate you as always. He said he will be the football coach next year. All right, Truth, we might have to let you out. The AP and Ken Palm rankings are out. We will talk about that as well. Indiana not in the top 25, but that's not a surprise. The top 25 right now is more of a joke than ever, in my opinion. More so than the football, because there's just more change at core positions, but we'll go over that. We'll talk about that and more. Tony V from Whitehall. Appreciate you. Whitehall, Michigan, that is. Rudy the Boxer. Caleb says the Rangers haven't lost yet. Have they played? Doug pointing out, yes, the Boogie Bland announcement coming on Friday. 5 Left's on as well. Heath from down in Kentucky. Danville. Actually, that's the last name Coyle. You probably see that a lot down there, Heath. But yes, recruiting, all the rage right now. Of course, Liam McNeely committing to Indiana. He is in the ear of Boogie Fland, as Boogie Fland will be making his decision this Friday at 2 p.m. And we'll talk more about this later, but not only is Hoosier Hysteria this Friday night at 7 p.m., but Kentucky's Big Blue Madness is this Friday night at 7 p.m. So don't read too much into the Hoosier Hysteria part. Someone's going to be happy, really happy, and someone's going to be greatly disappointed on Friday.
Hey, just to clarify, Big Blue Madness actually happened this past week for UK.
Oh, it did?
Yep.
Well, I was just reading that.
Now maybe they have another blue-white scrimmage, but they already had their
I'm sure I just misread it. I didn't know anybody had anything already.
Yeah, it seems like every year they have these Midnight Madness style events earlier and earlier.
Well, it's supposed to be your first official practice, which is supposed to coincide with how far your first game is when you can begin practice, unless that's changed. But regardless, well, maybe that's a better sign then. Let me retract that. Indiana has Hoosier Hysteria Friday night at 7 p.m. Boogie Fland making his announcement Friday at 2 p.m. Now, I can see Indiana, being the video-conscious people they are, having – yeah, there you go, Derek. He is also chiming in. Thank you very much. Let me get that up. So you want to talk about seeing Simon Scott Assembly Hall just blow the roof off the place. If before Kanye West or who's playing? Yeah,
Isn't
you might as well just
Gucci Mane?
Gucci Mane, there you go. Gucci Mane. See, I'm not
last year
I'm not
G Herbo. This year it's
I'm not in the Gucci crowd, man. Not that I have anything against Gucci Mane. I don't wear Gucci. I can't afford Gucci. It's just above my pay grade is all. But Gucci Mane performing at Hoosier Hysteria. I'm sure the Blue Hairs can't wait.
What's
I bet
the Blue
they're
Hairs
excited.
mean? I don't get that reference.
You don't know what Blue Hairs are?
No, I don't.
People, tell him what Blue Hairs are. You ever seen a woman who's probably in her late 60s, maybe 70s, when they go get their hair done, it ends up kind of with a blue tint?
I've never noticed that, and I also didn't know they were called blue hairs. But hey, you learn something new every day.
Google that term. It's it's what you call just a slang. There, see, Doug
Blue hair,
knows.
and here we go. A derogatory term meaning an elderly woman characterized as having hair that is treated with blue rinse. I did not know that.
Bam. It's not meant to be derogatory. It's just meant to be identifiable. It's a blue hair. She's an older woman. Instead of saying, hey, she's an older woman, say it's a blue hair. I think it's nicer to say it that way, personally. Look at Derek. Oh, people, JTP.
Hey, at least you all know, right?
Always in the know. But yeah, recruiting is the rage. Liam McNeely, he's recruiting. He's IU's best recruiter right now, because he's probably, I don't know how much he's really calling him. But I promise you, he has probably reached out to him, but who knows? He might be. And so we'll see. We'll see what effect it has, but that's coming this Friday at 2:00. But what I'm saying is, since Indiana's having their Hoosier Hysteria that night, can you imagine if, well, they will have a video. We'll have a video of him as an announcement. If that were to go Indiana's way and they play that announcement over the scoreboard, it would have been better to make that announcement then if it was Indiana. That would just be bonkers for the fans. But lots of other things going on, as Friday night is Hoosier Hysteria, your first look at this year's Indiana basketball team. Also on Saturday, Indiana takes on Rutgers, the Scarlet Knights, in for them, very, very important football game. You lose this game, and it's kind of like, if I had a towel, I'd
I hate to be dramatic, but I've been saying this the past few weeks now. This is kind of judgment week for this season of Indiana football.
We've said that a long time.
Well, I think for a while we were saying whatever happened in the Louisville game was going to kind of be what happens the rest of the season. And it was kind of an omen. But at the same time,
that was going to be a telltale sign. And what the Louisville game showed me exactly is they have the capability on defense. Okay. Yep. That was backed up Saturday against Michigan. Even though they got their drawers beat off 52-7, that becomes a depth issue. Michigan's 3 deep at every position. They don't have a lineman, I said this yesterday, that has taken over 30 snaps this season. I promise you, if you look at Indiana's defensive line, they're probably double that. Well, first of all the guys they have are probably a little bit better, and they've got 2 to 3 of them. That just wears you down. That becomes depth. But Indiana sacked Michigan's quarterback 3 times in the first quarter. That has I don't even know how long it's been since that's happened. Their quarterback hadn't even been sacked 3 times since the national semifinal championship game last year. And that was for the entire game. Indiana would eventually get to him a 4th time, sacking him 4 times. So their front line is working and working at it. It's just an abundance of other issues. Greg Doyle from the Indy Star had a piece out. Ironically, I asked him to join us tomorrow in regards to a piece he put out yesterday on the IHSA and their transfer rules, because they have been they have just been the worst in the history of, they've been worse than the NCAA as far as transfers go. But anyway, I noticed today he put out a piece in regards to Tom Allen, asking, it's too expensive to get rid of him, and maybe it's too expensive to keep him. But we'll talk about that and more. He'll join us tomorrow. We've got to take a break on the program today. Mike DeCourcy, Chronic Hoosier, plenty to talk about. College football pick'ems. We'll get to that as Bill Evans, want to give him a shout out. Had a great week. Uncle Bums, Bill is probably our longest listener on the show. I will say that with complete confidence. I know that he has been listening to us since we were on one radio station down in the Louisville market in Jeffersonville. And so he is probably our longest listener, and grateful for him. But we'll get to all that and much more here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Oh, my love, my darling. Boy, I need a new office chair, like in the worst way. This right handle is, the brace has come loose from under it and it's broken, and it keeps sticking me in the leg, and I can't take it. Well, I can. I'll do every day, but that's a shame. Ooh. Wisconsin loses their quarterback.
Wow.
Out indefinitely after breaking his throwing hand. Yikes.
That's a game that I initially said was winnable for Indiana. Even if they don't have their quarterback, I still don't think I'd put it in that category anymore. But
I never would have.
No, Wisconsin's not the Wisconsin that we know and love of the past. But
it comes down to coaching, man. Coaching. There is not a team that they will play that is not better coached.
Well, they lost to Washington State. That was kind of the sign where I thought they weren't as good as they.
Washington State is very good. Washington State has a top 10 quarterback.
Who is their quarterback?
I don't remember his name, but he's
I'm trying to see
one
who
of the
else
good ones.
Wisconsin's played this year. I thought they had a couple letdowns. Maybe it was just the Washington State game. They've lost 2 games. The other one was to Iowa 15-6, and that was this week.
15-6. Who did? Illinois?
No, Wisconsin beat Iowa or lost to Iowa 15-6. Illinois beat Maryland though this week. Good morning, Mr. DeCourcy.
Hey, I got to check out and check back in so I can get my camera right because it's not.
Oh, okay, that's totally fine.
Okay. Let's see.
I'll
maybe I can get it. Maybe I can get it right here. We're not on, right? There we go.
There we go. There we go.
There's that beautiful face.
All right, just in time. We're back in 30 seconds.
All right. Sweet deal for all returning students, no matter where you go to school. At the Golf Club at Eagle Point, students can play for the rest of 2023 for just $299. That's right. Play as many rounds as you like for just $299. That's better than a birdie. But you don't have to be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Tuesday, October 17th. Appreciate you being with us. As always, joined now by the great Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. Before I forget, for those of you following us on 1380 The Fan in Fort Wayne, make sure you tune in the mornings for Caleb and Kenny. They've got 4 tickets to give away each day to the IU football game if you want them. I hate to, but also right after Indiana Sports Beat Radio, stay tuned there for Brett Rump. He's got a pair of tickets each day to go see Foreigner at the Coliseum on October 24th. Now that's worth going to. That takes me back to my childhood, Mike. Not childhood, back to high school. That was like my first, and I hate to say this out loud, but one of my very first 8-track tapes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I got to be honest, Jim. I didn't think you were old enough for 8-track tapes, so you're pulling it off.
I try to hold it well, but man, when the truth comes out. But yes, my first car in high school was a 1974 Chevy Nova. I remember we bought that thing and my dad painted it, and it was before its time. It had a homemade sunroof in it that someone had put it like you would open and it would collapse again. It was like made out of like the roofing material they would put on.
Oh my God.
You know those cars back in the day where they would add that little bit of it wasn't leather, but it was something.
Wow.
But anyway, this would collapse and you could open it back up, which was great until my dad saw one of my friends hanging out the window yelling at some girls once. He took care of that. I got home and he caulked it shut.
You know, one of the things I was thinking about, I still have some of the, a rebought on CD or just on my iPhone, some of the albums that I had on 8-track when I was younger. And I don't know about you, but I can, like, when I hear a song, I remember where it broke, so it would jump to the next track. So young people won't know what the heck, but like, because there were 4 tracks and they didn't all fit mathematically into the time, they had to cut in the middle of a song. So like on Left Overture for Kansas, right in the middle of the wall, it cuts out and then it picks up on the other side, and it never worked quite right. You missed a chunk of the wall there.
Oh man, 8-track tapes. People who I know a lot of people do that are listening know, but that was just funny. Click. For those of you, and most people don't even use your CDs.
No,
are out. It's all out now. You know what you need? It's all just in the cloud.
Well,
welcome aboard, man.
The amazing thing, Jim, is that okay, so CDs are out now, but vinyl is coming back, and I don't get it. I don't understand it, because like we couldn't wait to get CDs after growing up on vinyl, because you didn't have to worry about the needle and the sound was better. But a lot of people are out there getting into vinyl. I know.
That's been going on for a couple of years now,
yeah.
and it is amazing. Don't you wish? Well, I know I do. When I was a kid, my dad, although they were a bunch of country albums, he had a bunch of Hank Williams albums, and I'm like,
wow.
Yeah, boy, do I wish I had all that stuff back now. I mean,
that's like your mom threw away your baseball cards, right?
Oh, gee whiz. Oh, yeah. Let's see. And I had someone ask me on just commenting on the YouTube broadcast, what's a jabroni? Because in the opening clip, which you don't hear, but in our opening, our show opener, I think it is John. That must be. I think that's The Rock.
No, it's Travis Kelce from whenever he was talking about the Cincinnati mayor last year.
Oh, please don't say that, because that means you know what's going to come up next.
Yeah,
oh my God.
You only have to mention her name if you don't want to talk.
Don't even say the name Travis Kelce, because you cannot have Travis Kelce without Saturday Night Live. He was on Saturday Night Live. He made a cameo, and you know what's hilarious? I watched Saturday Night Live, but I didn't see, because I kind of skipped through Ice Spice the second time, and I'm like, I didn't know that Swiftie made a cameo until like the next day. I happened to see it online. I'm like, what? I'm like, well, thank God I did skip through that. I probably would have flipped a gourd. I don't know. But that was actually one of the skits they did.
They did.
They opened with was Fox Sports guys And the whole talk was about Taylor Swift, which is pretty much dead on.
It was hysterical. That was one of the funniest skits on the whole show. It was hilarious. Having them argue over their friendship bracelets. It was phenomenal. It was great stuff.
See, and luckily I didn't know about the friendship bracelets. I figured it out along the way. Terry Bradshaw has to be hating. He was portrayed by a female. So that's can't be fun for him, but although very capable and funny, he is hilarious on there. But he's funny, but it takes. Now I look back to when I was a kid and the shows that were on and the people they had on. And I mean, I didn't really know who they were, Hank Stram and all these guys, which I do now, of course. But back then I'm like, who are these old guys? Who are all these old guys? Which I'm sure if they're young enough, when kids watch these shows, they're like, who was Terry Bradshaw? Who was Howie Long? Because my God, Terry's been out of the game for 30, 40 years.
40 years. His last game was played, I believe, in 83. Threw a touchdown pass, but his elbow blew out and he couldn't go any longer, and that was it.
Well,
and, that's
ended his career on a TD pass. That's pretty nice.
And it essentially clinched a playoff berth for the Steelers that year, but he couldn't play in the playoff game, and it did not go well.
Well, he's got 4 rings, which only Tom Brady can say that.
Correct.
And he did it in a time where there were, I mean, that was bloody, brutal football, baby. Bloody, brutal football. People do not understand. There basically were no rules back then.
Let me say, Jim, let me say that one of the interesting things about that is, when people talk about there's some things now they're doing with the quarterbacks that are absurd. Look, I'm a big believer in protecting the quarterback.
Oh boy, you can't breathe on them now.
There have been penalties called that have been just absurd, and they're doing the same with the defenseless receiver. And it's like, if that's the case, then like if you can't hit the receiver going over the middle, then everybody should throw over the middle all the time, because you can't hit them. No matter what you do, you can't hit them. You can't hit them with your shoulder, and so that's a problem. But I went through. Donnie Shell was considered maybe the fiercest hitter of the Steelers. Wasn't necessarily the best player, but he's a Hall of Fame player, and he was considered to be the fiercest, hardest hitter. And I went through when he was about to be named to the Hall of Fame, and when we were going through all this recalibration of what is legal hit and what is not a legal hit in the NFL. I went through a 11-minute compilation of his biggest hits. 11 minutes worth of hits. So that's a ton of hits. And I saw one time where he used his helmet. One time in 11 minutes worth of Donnie Shell hits. Because they didn't do it then. Because they weren't taught to do it. That's a modern innovation, so to speak. I don't know. I guess anything new is an innovation, but it's not a good innovation. That came after. So the 70s were you're right. I mean, like Joe Green got away with a lot, and Jack Lambert would, push people and stuff. That stuff they let go. But the hitting itself was self-preservation. They didn't want to get themselves injured because they weren't making enough money to throw their bodies around and like, okay, if I get hurt, I have a $12 million signing bonus. Like, you had to be out there the next year to make your $350,000 or whatever it was. And so they didn't do that. That came later in the late 80s, 90s, 2000s, and then they got it out, and they need to get it out.
I don't know that people were taught that, is that they started doing it to make a name for themselves or to stick out, to make bigger hits. I wasn't taught that when I played, and I wouldn't have done it anyway because it's stupid. I'm not leading with my damn head. I knew that I had a neck below my head that I did not want to hurt, and that my shoulders were protected in a much better fashion, and I could hit harder with my shoulder because my shoulder doesn't give. my head, well, hell, you don't know which way that thing's going to go if you hit it the wrong angle, but just delivering the blow with the shoulders is always best. And I've never understood that. That's one issue I've just never understood. I'm like, okay, I know that you want to make the hit, but why can't you make that same hit without using the helmet? You can, and it's just as impactful.
Yeah, that has been a definite upgrade in football at all levels. I know people get angry at targeting calls, and they get upset about, and some people use derogatory words to describe the football of today. The football of today is plenty physical. It is not. It is not lacking in physicality. It just needs to be intelligent physicality. And 99% of what we're getting now in the NFL is. And it's better for the recipient of the hit, and it's better for the deliverer of the hit. So I'm happy to see that. But it is interesting that as much as that football of the Butkus era, the late great Dick Butkus, and Jack Lambert and Ray Nitschke and those, they were tough guys, and they definitely delivered hard hits. But
Butkus's most famous quote was,
"No."
His goal was to hit someone so hard that their head came off.
Oh, jeez. He didn't mean it, guys.
No, he said he did not mean it literally, but he did say that. But that's how those guys felt and talked back then, because that was the mentality. But he wasn't talking about with his head. He was just talking about being, oh man, you want to talk about tough SOBs, man. Those guys, that was it. How did you catch the Colorado-Stanford game over the weekend?
Like most Americans, I was asleep when all that happened.
29-0 halftime lead by Colorado and Neon Dion, Coach Prime. And to me, that says one thing. Boy, they were all looking at me. We're up 29-0, baby. They were all probably posing and losing overtime.
Yeah,
you can't Stanford to Stanford.
He's not the first to let that happen, but it's not a great moment for Colorado football. But that's it's an experience that those guys will probably not repeat if they're able to get another 29-0 lead or something approximate to that. It was obviously poor. We've seen teams that have been unable to hold on to leads. Goodness gracious. Atlanta Falcons. Okay, what's bigger? 29-0 over Stanford or 28-3 over the New England Patriots? So it happens at all levels of football. And I would say that one was in the Super Bowl. Lost on that night in 2018, was it? 2018?
Yeah, when you do it at the Super Bowl level, that's a whole different level there. That's that'll yikes. That's one that never gets forgotten and never stops hurting. I could not imagine being on that team and never having won a Super Bowl. That's like being, I don't know. That's like I'm being almost dying and being that close to being brought back to life and not making it. My second, Oregon at Washington. For the second week in a row, we have a game that lived up to the hype. Texas, Oklahoma was an incredible Red River rivalry game that was awesome, back and forth slugfest. And man, oh man, Oregon at Washington was just the same. Oregon probably should have won the game if they don't make some questionable calls, which I don't ever want to second guess a guy who is in that position, but I'm going to. I don't know. I don't know how you don't take the field goal at the half. That's the one. The other stuff, I'm good with. But the field goal at the half, you got to take that. You're coming out because you're getting the ball. You're golly that you have momentum on your side on the road in one of the most raging environments there is in college football. You got to do that, and he didn't, and it came back to biting.
Yeah, that's been a trend of coaches lately, that they think that the 3 points, you have the opportunity for the 7. So you go for it. And that, I think there are certain circumstances where that's prudent. Like if you're down 2 touchdowns and it's a short yardage and you can maybe make it, it's different. But when you're in a game like that, it's basically a basketball game. I mean, it's okay, who's going to have the ball last with the chance to score? I think that was a significant mistake, and there were others later on that were punitive as well. That was not a game that Oregon's gonna want to bronze that tape. I mean, they played well, obviously, but they made some really difficult decisions that punished them and ultimately elevated Washington. And who knows, maybe made Michael Penix the Heisman frontrunner.
I know everyone wants to talk about some basketball, and we will in the next segment. But yeah, to me, Michael was the front runner. He had kind of slipped ahead, but now, not only with that performance, but the performance of Caleb Williams and USC losing at Notre Dame, and after a week after Notre Dame loses to Louisville gets beat by Pitt, and USC struggles, goes to overtime to beat Arizona. That's gonna knock Caleb Williams down quite a step. Man, I just knew you're not gonna have back-to-back Heisman Trophy winners for whatever reason every year. We've seen guys win it in their was a freshman for Johnny Football was a freshman, but other juniors have won it and could not come back to win it as a senior year. It's hard. It is just hard, people. Everything has to go your way. And not only that, he just happens to be playing in the craziest, baddest ass conference that there is right now. And nobody saw that coming I was talking about Oregon. They're still, man, they're dangerous. They are so good. They're going to beat the heck out of, I would not bet against them the rest of the year. They're that good. When you can perform that well in that environment against that kind of a team, then you're going to look out. The misfortune is the Pac-12 has struggled to get a team into the college football playoffs. I don't think that's going to be a problem this year. Whoever wins the Pac-12 has got to go without question in my mind. But they probably could have been a conference that's set 2 this year, because somebody does sometimes. But then we have the Big Ten. Is there a possibility that the Big Ten gets 2 in with, Penn State and Ohio State both having to play Michigan before the Big Ten championship? Georgia, if they go undefeated, of course they're going to get in, reigning champion, undefeated, etc. And then you look over at Oklahoma in the Big 12. So here we are again. It's going to be at the end of this year, getting those 4 teams. That's going to be, somebody's going to get left out. This may be the year that the best teams that got 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th are better than some of the teams we've seen in the playoffs.
Well, I don't know about better, because
not this year, but in previous years. This is an unbelievable good year.
If you look over the last decade or so, during the decade we've had that playoff, most of the time they've basically been super teams, dominant over their conferences. I think
Alabama.
I think the difference this year will be that you'll have teams that have a legitimate argument to get in and that won't be in. And that again shows why the expansion is necessary. It's essential, and it's long overdue. College football has been dragged into this, and now you see the value of it. I was always just an advocate of 8. I never even thought about 12 because I knew 16 was too many. I knew they wouldn't do that. And so I just settled at 8 just to get it to where people actually had to earn it and not be selected, and not just be selected. I'm not opposed to selecting in a championship. I'm not opposed to that. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge advocate of the NCAA tournament. I love Wimbledon and the U.S. Open and all of that. And there are selections in those to fill out a 128-player field. So I'm not opposed to that. I'm opposed to the concept that you're only selected, that there's no way that you can say on day one of practice, if we do this, we're in. And this is the last year of that nonsense. Now, with this as balanced as it is, the top 8 to 10 teams are really balanced. Georgia is not worlds better than everybody else. They can barely beat South Carolina. I'm
not sure they're the number one team personally.
I'm sorry?
I'm not sure they're the number one team personally.
They may not be, but my point is that there's nobody that's created a clear distance between themselves and everybody else. I don't know. Michigan may yet establish that.
I was going to ask, how do we know? We still don't know how good they really are. They are dominating the teams they play, but they have yet to play anyone of substance, and will only play Ohio State and Penn State, which these are 2 top 5, top 6 teams, but they won't be tested almost along the entire way, which allows them to just keep building and building. But they are dominant when you play against them, although Indiana was able to sack the quarterback 3 times in the first quarter. Their quarterback hadn't been sacked 3 times since last year's national semifinal game, and they ended up getting to him a 4th time, although they gave up 52 points. But it just shows there are cracks in possibilities. I don't know. I still don't know how good they are. I look at a team like Washington that I know who they just beat, partly because of some calls, maybe, but I know the talent that they have on offense, and they're not, terribly poor on defense either.
I think Michigan's got, between the quarterback and the running backs, they've got a significant team, but their schedule is entirely backloaded. I mean, they haven't even played Maryland, which Maryland may not be top 25, but they showed in a lot of their games that they're very capable. They went to Ohio Stadium and believe they were either up at half or right there at half. So even them, Michigan hasn't played. So Michigan will have to prove something in their final 3 games. Penn State, Maryland, Ohio State is about as challenging a stretch as anybody will have faced all season in 2023. And they have to do one after the other. There's not even a bye week in between those. There's 11th Penn State, the 18th is Maryland on the road, and then Michigan on the 25th. So they have to go through all of them. They'll have to prove it. And if they do, they do. But I do think it's fair to say that there just hasn't been anybody out there that has shown great might. And I think that's why it's a shame that we don't have the 12-team playoff this year, and we have to wait another 12 months. Because this is an ideal launching pad for such an idea. Because the likelihood is that the games in the first round, the 5-12, 6-11s, etc., will be extremely competitive. And then the winners of those, I don't know, presumably 4-5, 1-8, etc., those would be great games too. That's what we want to see. We want to see a real championship, and at last we're getting it.
We've got to take a quick break. Before we come back with more, we'll talk some basketball recruiting. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network is with us. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
I'm trying to see how many points per game that Iowa is averaging, because they might end up winning the Big Ten West now.
I saw a stat. I don't remember what it exactly said, but they're the team with the highest winning percentage in the last, I don't know what amount of years, that scores the least amount of points. I know that was kind of a lot of word vomit, but it's kind of funny.
Defense wins championships, baby, and your OC has a caveat in his contract.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with scoring points, though.
You're going to need to score some points along the way, because that's one thing where Michigan reminds me of an Alabama team. They are just so defensively solid. Their offense is good. It's not off the charts. You don't have a guy throwing for 400 yards a game, but he is doing what he's supposed to do. He's not making the big mistakes. They're scoring on the ground, through the air. They're very balanced, but it's their lines. Good God, they don't have a defensive lineman that's had over 30 snaps on the season. That's
Wow.
buddy, they're going over there and getting in recliners. They're coming out of the game and just sitting in a recliner and wait before they go back in. Of course, I got to talk about Indiana landing Liam McNeely, and then the impending announcement of Boogie Fland on Friday, same day as Indiana's Hoosier Hysteria. I've had people talk about, they can fly him up. I don't think that they can legally. I'm pretty sure he's already had an official visit. You only get one official visit,
right?
And he would have to fly on his own dime if that were the case.
Does he have official finalists at this point?
Indiana, it's down to Indiana, Kentucky, and Alabama, but that's pretty much Indiana and Kentucky in my mind.
Gotcha.
I would be shocked if Alabama was able to usurp both Indiana and Kentucky. Right. Not that they just landed Aiden Sherrill, but I know Mike Woodson wants him, and that New York. I know Calipari's from the Northeast, but Mike Woodson's got these New York roots. They've been talking to Carmelo Anthony, and they're not going to get beat on NIL.
You can trust that you're making the right choice with Garnish Catering. Visit garnishcatering.com. That's garnishcatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of WOW Food Group. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by WOW Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, coming to you from high atop the Golf Club at the Eagle Point Studios. Joined by Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and the Big Ten Network. Mike, of course, this past weekend, Indiana got the news that they have been waiting for and the fans have been waiting for, and that was the commitment of Liam McNeely, a 5-star out of Montverde Academy. And one of the first things that he said is he's going to be in the ear of Boogie Fland and talking to his teammate, Derek Queen, which, of course, bodes well for Indiana. But the decision by, first of all, landing Liam McNeely, another big win for Mike Woodson as they go head-to-head with Kansas in that.
Well, I think that, for me, the opposition is only, to me, important in that it becomes more formidable if it's Kentucky or Kansas or Carolina or whoever. It doesn't, to me, convey greatness because those guys miss on people sometimes too. So that doesn't matter. What it is it's in the tape, and the tape is really, the tape is epic. I mean, he's a big wing who can handle, drive it, shoot. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's 6'8", who can put the ball on the floor, shoot at an elite level, who plays physically and tough. He doesn't mind mixing it up. He's not afraid to mix it up. Obviously, if you have the ability to get the ball to the lane, you're going to get hit at times, and he doesn't shy from that at all. He's an excellent shooter. He's got great form. You just don't see a lot of guys like this. A lot of 6'8" guys who can really shoot it. And I think that basketball is better at utilizing those players earlier in their careers than it used to be. There was a time, probably 20, 25 years ago, when a player with his skill set, college basketball didn't know what to do with him. I think of a young man named Jared Ward, who was from Mississippi and wound up playing at Michigan. And I'm not putting on any coaches, but I don't think the game knew what to do with a Jared Ward then. but it does now. The game accommodates that player. The game is to an extent built around wing players, and if you have the size that a Liam McNeely has, it's even more advantageous to you, because then you can defend multiple positions. You can defend the 4 if you have to. You obviously can defend your own man. You have that ability. Probably you can switch on to a smaller 2 if you have to. But then that player, that bigger 4 has to switch on to you, he's going to struggle to keep up. The smaller 2 is going to struggle to deal with you when you get the ball deep. So it's a great advantage that he enjoys because of his size. I mean, I think I need to see a longer sample size of what he does as a shooter within games. But I do know that guys who can shoot are underrated by the services. It's the one weakness that still exists. Big guys are overinflated to a small degree. The best big guys are overinflated a little bit, and the best wings who can shoot are always a little bit under where they ought to be. So he's listed top 15. If he can shoot it the way I think he can, I think he's probably more valuable than that.
45% last year, currently shooting 40%. That's just a high number. I mean,
yeah, and he's playing good comp too.
He's exactly.
Yeah, and so I like I said, I wanted to see it a little bit over time, but the numbers are there. And like I said, from my ability to evaluate what a good shooter looks like, he's got great form. He's got good positioning with his feet. He knows how to. He doesn't overextend on his shot. A lot of young jump shooters will overextend. They get more elevation than is helpful to their shot. You don't need to jump 40 inches to get off your jump shot. And all it does is it's harder to control the verticality. It's harder to keep on frame. He jumps as much as he needs to jump. So he keeps a very steady, consistent angle on the shot. He's a really attractive player. I think there's a real appeal to how he plays, and I would venture to say that, like players in previous seasons, he's probably better than the 15th or 13th player in his class. It's a good class, but he's probably better than that, because I do think wings who can shoot are still underrated by the consensus, by the services. I'm not picking on any one individual service. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the value of that player now. You need those guys who can stretch the floor, and I don't think they're always embraced in the way that they could be. I mean, I think about a year ago, when Grady Dick came into Kansas, and I saw him play here in Indy at the Champions Classic, and I'm like, there's no way that kid's top 15. He's one of the 3 or 4 best freshmen in the country. It was automatic because he was such an amazing shooter. That you just can't underrate that guy. We saw it as well down in Alabama with their freshmen from a year ago. You just didn't see the kind of embrace of Brandon Miller when he was being recruited that you should have, and he winds up being basically first or second team All-American. He was not as highly rated as he should have been because he was a big wing who can really shoot. So that's the excitement about what Indiana is getting to their team. We talked before. I mean, honestly, if he could skip out on Montverde and walk into this team right now, I mean, he would answer the last question about this team, because then you'd have all that size, you'd have a veteran point guard, and you'd have a guy who can hit 40% on threes. He would literally answer your last question.
I took us a little long in that first segment, and I wish I hadn't. I don't know if you have a few minutes to stick around for
Sure,
to talk a little bit more, but we've got to take a break to get into our second hour. For those of you staying with us, we appreciate you. We'll be back with more. Mike DeCourcy is with us from the Big Ten Network and the Sporting News. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Yeah, I apologize. I got on a rant and didn't let you talk, Mike. So
no, it's all right. It's all right.
I need to go a little further. It's what I do, baby. I go on rants. Now, and I'm going to bring this up again, but where did it go? Andy says that his official visit was in the summer and considered a junior year visit, so he still officially has one more visit he could take. With his announcement coming at 2, I'll ask this on the air, but do you see any possibility that he is brought in, if that is actuality, for a 7 p.m. Event that night, because the roof would fly off of Simon Scott Assembly Hall? I'm not kidding. It would go absolutely nuts.
Well,
forget about Gucci Mane, who I know that you'd love to come see, but Boogie Mane would be Boogie Mania.
Yeah, I doubt that, because remember, he's still a high school kid. He's got stuff to do on his own campus. I don't know if that. And hey, you know what? I wouldn't be planning the celebration. Just be crossing the fingers if you're a Hoosier fan.
Yeah, this is not. Last week I told people, said, no, you don't have to worry. Liam McNeely is going to Indiana. I was sold. I was talking to enough people. That was not a question in my mind. As a matter of fact, I put it on one of our boards one night, said, here you go, Merry Christmas. This is not an opinion. This will happen.
Wow.
Boogie Fland, I can't say that. I talked to my guy in New York again yesterday, and I don't think anything has changed. I mean, it is what it is. It's a race between Indiana, Kentucky, and Alabama is there, but you're in a race with Indiana and Kentucky, or with Kentucky. It's going to be hard to win. There's so many different factors, but I think Indiana fans should feel really, really good about their chances. They're not going to get beat on NIL on this one. The only one they might get beat on NIL is Maryland, and that's because Rob Cassidy was on with me yesterday, and he says they're probably going to throw the bulk of their NIL at Derek Queen to try to land him, which I don't know what that bulk means, but
and within the Stonecrest golf community, choose from one of. By the way, Jim, real quick, once we get into this segment, I'm going to step out for a couple minutes. I will text you when I'm back in my seat. Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday. Mike DeCourcy was kind enough to stick around after I rambled on a little bit too long in the first segment. Welcome back. Mike, we were talking about recruiting and Indiana just landing Liam McNeely. That was very important for a lot of reasons. It happened on national television, on ESPN with Paul Biancardi, and he had his peeps around him. He had Derek Queen right behind him, who, his thing is the phone, call me. So every time you see a 3, he's going to be doing the call me deal. But he had the actual old school rotary phone with him. First of all, I want to know, where the hell did he get a rotary phone, and does he know how to use it?
I think the answer to question B is absolutely not. But that's okay, because it probably doesn't work. But I would imagine that someone found one of those at a garage sale or something. That The question is, did he have to pay big money for it? I would say probably not.
There's a video out I've seen before where they put a rotary phone in a room and they put two younger kids in there and they go, okay, if you had to call so-and-so or call this number, how would you do it? And it's hilarious. They pick it up. I don't even know if they pick up the receiver. They maybe pick up the receiver, but they have no freaking clue. And I'm like going, oh my God, it's pretty funny. Boogie Flan making his announcement on Friday. And of course, that would give Indiana a top 5 class right there, I would imagine, with two of the top 5 stars. But it would give Indiana a class they haven't had. I don't know how far back I'd have to go there. Tom Crean, probably. Oladipo and Zeller, certainly.
Well, you have to remember, Victor was not highly recruited. I mean, Victor
right. You're right. I'm looking at the end result, which I shouldn't be. So as far as coming in, I'd still have to go back and look. But, the famous class for Indiana was the 1989 class, but they had half the damn team come off that class. There were 7 guys in one recruiting class, which was
that the multiple Graham class? Is that the one that had both Greg and Pat? Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. And Calvert Chaney and Todd Lindeman and Lawrence Funderburk and Chris Reynolds. Gee whiz, I'm missing somebody, I think, but all these guys played and were an important part, except for Funderburk, who transferred, but they all played and were an important part. Todd Leary, how am I forget Todd? So yeah, but we'll see. If they land Fland, that is going to send Hoosier Nation into just a freaking
way to phrase hysteria.
Exactly. It will absolutely be Hoosier hysteria. There you go. You hit the nail on the head. Then there's one more that will follow that. And that announcement coming from Derek Queen. He has a visit to Maryland on the 22nd, which is this weekend. So while Hoosier hysteria will have gone on and happened, he's going to be at Maryland, and they are going to be doing their very, very best to get him. He's been considered a Maryland lean from the area, but nothing means nothing anymore. I mean, I heard Paul Biancardi say that he thinks he is the best big man in the class. Well, if that's the case, is he a one and done? And if so, I don't know where he goes to school really matters as far as it being a home or anything like that. I think it will come down to NIL and what he thinks this team has as value. And Indiana will be loaded with talent if he were to go there, along with those other two and what they have. I know normally I would say they're not going to get beat on NIL on anyone. Maybe him, just because he would be a third one and they are going above. Maryland might be going above and beyond. But that's going to be a shine of desperation if Maryland's doing that, because then what are you doing with everything else? So it's going to be interesting.
Purely desperation. Think about it. You don't always need a lot of players. You don't. I remember in around 97 or 98. One of the things about that I don't like about modern recruiting grading, not the player analysis. I think they do a great job with that. But the way classes are evaluated is you're graded on volume. Okay, so if I want to have the greatest recruiting class of all time, if I could sign LeBron James and get him in college, boom, I got it. Because LeBron James, if he had gone to college, would have scored however many points he wanted, got however many. He was the most unbelievable player. He scored 25 points as an 18-year-old in his first NBA game. So it's not about volume. It's about fit. It's about what you're adding to your team that you don't need. And in Maryland's case, I don't really know everybody that's going to come back or not, but there's a base there. They don't necessarily need a lot of players to come in. They probably need a guard to replace Jameer Young after this year. Dante Scott's going to be done. So they need some players. And again, that's part of why it's important for them to get someone like Derek Queen. But they may not need a ton of talent, but they need talent. Whereas, Indiana obviously needed, they're going to need a point guard to replace X. They're going to need, they already brought in McNeely to add that offensive punch that even this year's team's going to fight to have. But then you don't know what's going to happen to your front court. I mean, you've got really talented young players who may not be sticking around. So that's where a Queen would really be helpful for IU because it would add some physicality to your front court that you don't lack now, but you may lack in 25.
And speaking of, there are prognosticators that have had some success that are known on the Twitter blogosphere. Trilly Donovan, one of those. Indian Creek Walker says, said he jiffed him. I think he means gold. Daggone it. Gold. Crystal balled.
Okay.
Crystal balled him, and he's 90% accurate. Says Jordan Harper, says IU at 83%. Jackson Collier says IU at 78%. And Andrew Barth, who will be on the show this week, says IU 93%.
And this, are we talking about with Boogie or Derek?
Yeah, Boogie Fland.
Okay.
So that's good news for Indiana, but again, doesn't mean anything. John Calipari can make a phone call. Who knows what happens between now and Friday at 2 p.m. But like I said, I think Indiana fans should feel good. And the fact that they're in this, and then the Boogie Queen thing, having not one, but two former high school teammates on a team. First of all, you don't see that very often in college. If that were to end up happening, that would be a little unusual. You've seen two guys go a lot. I think back to Mike Conley and Greg Oden going to Ohio State. Unfortunately for Indiana fans, but you don't generally see three guys on a roster from the same high school. And I don't know that will have any bearing whatsoever here, but that's a possibility.
I think one of the reasons you don't often see that is not so much because there isn't talent at those, at any particular high school, because we know that there is, especially now with the prep schools, whatever you want to call them, like IMG or like Montverde. They're going to have multiple high major talents on their team. But I think sometimes the reason that they don't stay together is because they want their own stage, so to speak. They know that, I'm not going to use any particular names, but they know Joe is going to get, he's going to has a chance to get a lot of shots, and if he does, then that'll be less for me, and so that's why they often don't go to the same place. Even if they get along really well, they often will go separate ways so that each can get a spotlight, so to speak. I think there's a mistaken belief among prospects that they need to have a spotlight in order to be valued by the pros. It's really not true. The pros know if you can play based on what you do, how you do it, what physical abilities you have. They're actually going to value a guy greater if he is willing to sacrifice a bit, to not necessarily be the guy in the spotlight. Because I've said this before, and this is not me. This is not my original thought. This belongs to my friend Fran Fraschilla. That there are, I think, 450 plus players in the NBA, and about 430 of them are role players. So the NBA wants to see guys who can blend into winning teams. You have to have the skill to stand out when it's required, but they don't mind if you average 15 points a game or 13 points a game if it's in service of winning, and you're really an efficient offensive player, if you're really a dynamic athlete, etc. So that's something that families sometimes, summer coaches sometimes, agents if they're involved in the process, and sometimes they are. They get caught up in that isn't really that important. If you go to a school that wins, and the more you're going to be exposed plenty, and the more you win, the more the scouts are going to like you, because they're going to see he did this thing on that day in that game that made them win. Because the scouts know basketball at a level that goes well beyond, oh, he averaged 15 points and he got 20 shots a game. They know much more basketball than that.
And doesn't Kentucky already have a commitment from Derek Smith's son, or who? I'm confusing. Oh, daggone it! Someone's son, one of the top players in the country. Daggone it! Just drawing a blank on that name, but
it's DJ Wagner's kid.
There you go,
DJ
DJ Wagner,
the kid of Wagner,
right? From formerly of Louisville, but is commitment to Kentucky. That's something to sell. Xavier Johnson won't be here. That's something that IU is selling to Boogie Fland. And again, I hate to reference Paul Biancardi again, but I heard him say, just as a throwout on that announcement the other day, that he was talking about one of the biggest things that IU did is there was a guy he talked about who was not projected as a first round draft pick, but became one, and that was Jalen Hood-Schifino at Indiana. So that's probably something that was not lost upon Boogie Fland, and Indiana's probably not letting that be lost onto someone like Boogie Fland, because I know that John Calipari is going, hey, look what we do, yada yada. Well, Mike Woodson can't say that to that level because he hasn't been there that long, but he certainly can say it from us then.
He's 1 for 1.
And
John,
he's got the NBA guys, like I said, Carmelo Anthony, and that he has worked with.
Yes, of course. I just meant in terms of turning high school point guards into pros. He is 1 for 1. He's batting 1,000. There's no doubt about that. Calipari has had quite a few success stories at that position. DeJuan Wagner is on this year's team, not next year's team.
Oh, he's already there.
Yeah, he is there now. He is expected to have a significant season as a freshman, and probably to be gone after this year if everything goes the way it's supposed to. He's a very skilled player, very talented, taller than his dad, longer than his dad. Probably not quite the dynamic scorer that his dad was. His dad could go get you 35 before he got hurt. He was quite a talent. But he'll be a significant player for Kentucky this year. As far as I can tell, Kentucky's only recruit at this point is a top 50 type big man. So they don't have a ton of commitments at this point. So this is big for them.
Well, they got Joey Hart, who from right down the road here, who apparently won their dunk contest.
Wow.
So that's a little amazing. Mike, what's up next for you?
Working on a baseball story that's going to appear in the next week about the anniversary of one of the great moments in World Series history.
What year?
1988, maybe.
Okay, I was gonna do the Carlton Fisk.
No, not 1970, because that would be the
that's like
anniversary, and that's not really a round number. We don't do.
Then I can get up and hobble around with bad knee because they got a bad knee right now. Do the Kurt Gibson hobble around.
Well, there you go. That's 1988. There you go.
Oh, hello.
There you go.
That was incredible. Loved it. Make sure you tune in and look for Mike's content at the Sporting News. It's free, available to you. And give him a follow. He'll be on the Big Ten Network pretty often starting here soon. Mike, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you for the extra minutes with us today.
Thanks, Jim.
Mike DeCourcy with us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back with Chronic Hoosier right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. How's it going today?
How are you, sir? How have you been?
Doing well. Freshly rested. Back to fall, apparently. Good Lord, it got cold while we were gone.
Did you have a little vacay?
Yeah, we did. Went down to Florida last week. Had a good trip.
Right. That's right. Somewhere on the deal. What do you call that? Damn it.
The Panhandle.
Yeah.
We are in the jungle
Corner
side of the
that?
redneck Riviera.
But wasn't it in like the corner of the Panhandle or something?
Cape San Blas is the name of it.
Where is it? I have no idea.
It is. It's in the swamps between Panama City and the peninsula. If you head east from PCB, it's right by Mexico
Drivable.
Beach.
What is it? Is it like 10 hours?
Google says it's 12 hours and 20 minutes, and then the state of Alabama says we're going to make it 14 and a half.
Oh, damn. Nice. That's like going through Virginia.
It really is. Georgia may have the worst drivers in America. I think that stretch of 65 between Birmingham and Montgomery may just be the most ridiculous road in all the country.
Well,
I'm dead serious. You'll burn 90 minutes for nothing. Like there's no accident, no nothing. We're going to brake check on the interstate and come to complete standstill.
Well, Virginia just likes to give you tickets, man. The speed detectors are illegal. I got pulled over there once, and while the guy's writing me a ticket, his sergeant comes up and says, "I clocked you at so-and-so back here. We could give you 2 tickets." And I don't want to say anything, but I wanted to say, "No, you can't, dumbass. It's just, that's not legal." But they're ticket hungry down there, boy.
Yes, they are.
How's everything else going?
Oh, it's I'll say this was the first time on the way back I had zero interest whatsoever in either listening to or watching the game.
Yeah.
Because you just knew where it was. It was a great week, and no sense in ruining it with. And that's a sad state.
I've spent very little time talking about it, just because I'm trying not to pile on, and because there is not a lot positive to say. So I'm trying to.
Did you see the Star this morning? Greg Doyle's piece.
Oh yeah, he's actually gonna be on with us tomorrow. I had already asked him on about the IHSA piece he wrote the day before, and then that came out. I'm like, well, that's gonna be perfect timing.
All right, here we go, guys.
Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. And as a matter of fact, make sure you reach out. They have their early bird specials right now for next year's memberships. And I noticed that as an individual, it works out to be about $150 a month. That's pretty good. So give them a call. That number is 812-824-4040, 812-824-4040. Welcome aboard, Chronic Hoosier. He's been on a little vacay. Glad to have you back. How are you, sir?
I'm glad to be back, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Glad to bit. Lots going on in all around in the sports for Indiana, for the Big Ten. We just finished up. We were at Minneapolis last Monday and Tuesday or was that this Monday and Tuesday? I can't even remember.
That was last week.
Yeah, because today is Tuesday. Man, it just jives together as one long deal. But up in Minneapolis last week, got to see and talk to Mike Woodson, the players, some of the Purdue players. It's going to be an intense Big Ten season. We don't know who really has what other than Michigan State and Purdue. We know what Indiana has. We don't know what it's going to look like. And that is that's the question. What can this team do to put together some pieces that have been brought in and added to some pieces that are coming back, like Xavier Johnson, Trey Galloway, who is going to be there for a 4th year. And then you've got guys like CJ Gunn, Caleb Banks, Malik Renew, who are just coming into their own, I would estimate to say that. So in addition to that, great news on the recruiting side, as of course, Indiana landed Liam McNeely from Montverde Academy, and now they are waiting on a decision from Boogie Fland, which that's what I would call a little better than a coin flip for Indiana, especially if it was tails to Indiana, since tails is like 51% or something like that. But that's where we are.
Yeah, it's this is one of those where I admittedly I am not a recruiting guy. I gave up on that after the movement. It just too much effort and resources for too little tangible returns, at least for mine. But the people I know that are really, really into this, that keep tabs on this, that do this for a living, are pretty confident. Those who get paid to do this locally, whose job it is to bring the talent to Bloomington, are pretty confident. And that makes me pretty confident. I think all signs are pointing the right direction here for this to be a heck of a week for Mike Woodson and his staff. I think it has long since been believed that McNeely was an IU lean. You still love to see Woody being able to go up against Bill Self in Kansas and land a priority target. We've talked
twice in a row now. That's
yes.
2 big times in a row.
Yeah, the big difference with this one, it was a bell-to-bell close where they got in early. They deliberately kind of reallocated some of their efforts in the recruiting trail to heavily invest in this 24 class because they got in so late on a lot of the 23s. And while they were able to do really well in the transfer portal, which Woodson has proven basically since he showed up, his ability to whether it be retain his own guys and then go out and find some pieces. The big question was, can they close a long-term commitment? And I think that not only answers the question there with McNeely, but also, shows the potential with Boogie, even one that maybe you got in on a little late, that they were able to come in strong and best out some teams that have been in it for a considerably longer period of time. So it's still a lot of runway left in that one. Until it's signed, it's really, really tough to put a whole lot of stock in in the trade wins, if you will. But things certainly seem like they are on the up and up for Indiana. The momentum is squarely in their favor right now, and you love to see it. When that was the predominant question surrounding the wisdom of Woodson's hires. Can he recruit? Is he built for this college life and all it takes? I think it's pretty resounding yes, and not just Woody, but his ability to assemble a staff that's really effective in that regard. And you look at the Brian Walsh, the Adam Howard, the Jordan Holes, just the team that he's assembled, the impact they've been able to achieve in a relatively short period of time with no apparent signs of letting up right now. We've talked about this in the past. Momentum is sexy. Winning is sexy. Winners like to play with other winners, and you're starting to see perhaps the fruits of some of that. So, there's already, as people are currently debating the preseason rankings for the 23-24 season, you're already starting to see Andrew Slater comes out yesterday and says, there's a legit chance Indiana's a preseason top 10 team next year. And you look at it on paper, and it's going to be hard to disagree with that, which is ironic because you look at this year's team on paper, and everybody's hedging their bets on them. And it's understandable. When you replace that many players, when you bring in that much new blood, or expect guys to step into new roles who are maybe returning, it's really difficult for a lot of the analysts to justify those predictions on paper with so many uncertainties. Those that are more micro focused on it, friends of mine are really scratching their heads right now trying to justify. Ken Pomeroy comes out and puts IU at 49th in his rankings for this season. Which
and I wonder how that comes to be. Is that just strictly based on last year and with some high school numbers, some kind of matrixed in?
I am sure Ken has an algorithm for about everything that he posts. I can't tell you how much time I've spent just reading his explanations for his statistics.
Dude, I'm still not through it.
Trying to fully comprehend exactly what data I'm looking at. But the funny thing is they tend to be pretty good. Now there's certainly teams that are going to have variance. I think everybody's going to have some variance. But with this team, I just think there's so many new pieces that it's going to be really, really difficult, especially considering that, the staff has signaled very clearly they're looking to go in a very different direction as far as style of play. So how does that translate? Who knows? But when you look at the individual pieces, you have to believe that the synergy is there to overachieve from where they're currently being pegged right now. Now, all that can change as soon as you see him take the floor. As I just said this weekend, when Kim Pom came out, I'm more curious to see what Vegas does those first 2 weeks, because it's one thing to rely on statistical analysis that requires data sets in order to start connecting those dots. Vegas has to put a line on the very first game. Vegas has to put a line on the exhibition games. Vegas relies on people who know ball, not just numbers, but people who know ball. And you can generally tell after you watch them get some run and you see, especially when you look at that Wright State game, that is a sleeper tune-up for UConn. I think by then you should have a pretty decent idea. Obviously, there's a ton of ceiling left that early in the season, but you should have an idea where what trajectory their variance is going to be, if there's a variance at all. So fascinated to see how they get out of the gates and how they get tuned up for what's going to be, at least on paper, a really, really exciting season and a really challenging season for a pretty unproven squad.
No question. And speaking of that, oftentimes early in the season is a great time to make some bets because Las Vegas doesn't know. I mean, Las Vegas they're just tough. But in the early part of the season, there are so many unknowns that is not there. I remember there was a game last year that I'm like, oh my God, that's all they're giving IU. It was like, boom. So sometimes but then it works against you sometimes as well. But Indiana is going to be challenged early and often. Just finished booking my flight for New York for the Empire Classic, in which they will meet up with the defending national champion UConn Huskies. If they happen to win that game, they'll have to take on most likely the Texas Longhorns. If they are to lose the game against UConn, I expect that they'll take on Louisville. But that's just guessing. But between what happens between Texas and Louisville, judging off of last year. But it'll be interesting nonetheless. And that early season schedule is going to be tough. You get a Harvard game in between there, but then you have 2 Big Ten games that you have to play. So that is a different mindset than those lights and all of that up at Madison Square Garden. Then you got to get your mind into conference play, which is a different style. Then it's back out of that down to Atlanta to take on Auburn and back home to take on the probably number 1 ranked Kansas Jayhawks, who you just beat for a second time for a major recruit. So it not only going to be exciting, I expect the Simon Scott Assembly Hall roof to possibly they might want to check it for damage after that game.
Another conversation I just had, I am scared to death to see what the secondary market looks like by the time Kansas rolls in town. It's, last year, the Carolina game, get in the door price was higher than the Super Bowl. So Kansas at home with the recruiting battles freshly behind us now, it's going to be pretty intense. And, not the least of which, having traveled out to Lawrence last year, payback, got absolutely embarrassed, quite frankly, just to see an opportunity to return that favor. It's going to be a wild season for sure. But you look at that Maryland-Michigan combo to start December, and that's, I understand Connecticut may be a tough pull for a young team. Those
Is that
two
at
games,
Maryland?
Yeah, Maryland's at home, and then you go to Michigan.
Boy, they could not have got set up any better because Michigan is a little off right now. They don't have their coach.
I was going to say, do they even have a coach at the moment?
They lost, their best player, and then of course Maryland was unbeatable at home last year, but couldn't win on the road if you paid them, and they were being paid.
No, it's going to be a fascinating setup this year, and there's really for all the years where folks have complained about the cupcakes, I'm looking at that Kennesaw State game as a just a chance to catch a breath, because it's going to be a wild one, but you love to see it. There's a nice slate, and I think it's going to give a squad a good opportunity to really figure out who they are, how they want to play, what roles guys are going to have to assume, how to complement each other, but to give the staff a true sense of depth. And I'm looking especially at the defensive end right now, because combination of roster depth, injury depth, things of that nature. Little regression in last year's defense, and I expect Woody to put a pretty strong emphasis on that going forward, especially with the healthy Xavier Johnson back at the point of attack, with a little bit more length, a little bit more athleticism across the floor. It should be fascinating to see just how well they can apply the pressure and get into transition. Because for a team that's looking to break away from the strictly post up dominated offense, I think the defensive capabilities this year are going to lead to a ton of offensive opportunities, and this looks like a roster that's going to be built to run, to get up and down the floor, and possibly play quite a bit above the rim. So, from a stylistic standpoint, I'm really looking forward to maybe another step into a more modern era of the game, and we've already seen it. What type of talent it can attract presently. With this continued evolution, you got to imagine a lot of the guys in the recruiting pipeline are also anxiously awaiting to see just what type of transition this team makes as far as its philosophies and its style of play.
Well, and I think that is of uber importance to the future recruiting, is for recruits to see that style of play instead of the old-fashioned Big Ten. Let's just beat the crap out of each other in the post and kick it out or whatnot, which that is not going to be Indiana this year. As you said, they last year, of course, they had an uber All-American in Trace Jackson Davis. So you basically had to go through him, and he did not have the ability to draw guys to the outside, where Indiana will have that in abundance this year. Not only with Malik Renew, he can step out and draw his guy out. Khalil Ware is going to be expected to be athletic and move and get out, not just hang around the post. So it is going to be a different offense. You're going to have Mackenzie Mbako, who you want to count on for knocking down big shots, but also not just him. You need Xavier to be able to hit threes, even though he's the guy with the ball and distributing. He's going to be scoring as well, getting to the rack. It's what he did before. Hopefully, as he's also becomes a little bit of a 3-point threat, because then you've got to respect him in multiple ways. And of course, Trey Galloway just has to increase his volume, and that was a conversation had multitude of times at Big Ten Media Day, that is something he's worked on and needs to do, and acknowledges that has to happen. Then you got guys like CJ Gunn, who was a shooter coming out of high school and has probably only gotten better after his freshman year. You get through that freshman course, I should say, of moving up to D1 ball. Caleb Banks the same way, but Indiana has some very experienced pieces coming back. Malik Renew played pretty sometimes like a freshman last year, but mostly he was pretty solid. He did make some freshman mistakes, a little slow on defense at times, moving his feet, the fouling, but I think that another year has helped him immensely as well. But it's just going to be interesting to see what Kel Elware and Mackenzie Mbako bring, because it's unknown. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't. And, for all the talk of this change, and Woodson said, he expects to shoot a little bit more threes, but be a little, still retain some semblance of balance. We know Trey Galloway really had a breakout year from beyond the arc last year, but you look at the loss of Miller Kopp from on the perimeter. He led the team in attempts at 142 last season. Hood Schifino was second at 111 three-point attempts. Who's going to be, who's the ball going to find in those moments, and who's going to be willing to take and knock down those shots? Because that's, that has been the one of the critical pieces that Indiana has been missing consistently for pretty much a decade now, is that reliable outside shooter. And how many games, are decided when a team can go on a run, get a couple of threes, and either extend the lead or, cut the deficit so that they get it back within arm's reach, has truly been a game changer. And, across the sport, and Indiana has struggled in that regard. So for an offense that really wants to evolve and be a little more free flowing, a little more modern, eventually you've got to have some guys that are going to be available when the deep ball opens up. So fascinated to see exactly who. I think CJ Gunn's probably a great candidate for that. But I think, as in years past, it's going to start on the defensive end. That was a weird way of saying that. On the defensive end, and then flow over to the other side of the ball, because ultimately I think he's going to expect defense first. And I think defense is going to create a lot of offense. But when you look at the perimeter players, I think that's probably going to be the battle that likely decides a lot of that playing time, with the offense just being a byproduct of those choices.
Absolutely. Well, we'll look forward to it. Are you going to be able to make it out to Hoosier Hysteria?
I am, as a matter of fact, taking the kids this year.
Well, that'll be a fun time. It will be a rocking time. I'm sure you can't wait for Gucci Mane to come out. I'm sure it's your kid's favorite entertainer.
It's funny. Gucci is very much a top shelf name in my mind. You talk to a 16-year-old, it's kind of old news at this point. So don't get me wrong. It's cool to see big names in town at Assembly Hall. There's a little jealousy that Drake would attend Big Blue Madness and we get Gucci here. So we're turning in the right direction. We'll see, but when you have success, like I said earlier, success tends to gravitate towards it. So the fact that you're even it blows my mind. You're talking about having an act like Gucci Mane in Assembly Hall. Where I still look at the gym and I'm used to seeing no advertisements whatsoever. So it's been wild to see the transformation. I'm curious to see how the Meadowwood crowd reacts. But it's what the kids want. It's what makes the game fun. And more than anything, I am just excited to be there to start off another season.
Absolutely, brother. We look forward to seeing you and hopefully enjoy it. It's going to be a good one. Maybe there is great news for the Hoosier fan base to celebrate that night too. If that happens, how nuts if they have a video from him or whatever, if he chooses IU and they play that, I can only imagine how loud that building is going to be.
I'm in a group chat with some friends here that many of you probably know, and one of them had suggested the surprise entrance. Send the jet down, pick him up.
We've talked about that, Chronic, as a matter of fact, but you can't send a jet but he does have an official visit left that he could take to IU. He would have to fly commercial. So, and someone said earlier, well, there's not enough time to figure out bull crap. You get him a flight from New York, and where's Stepanak? How far from New York City is that?
No clue. None whatsoever.
Yeah, it's got to be close to the city, I would imagine. But shoot, you kidding me? You get a nonstop. You get him a nonstop flight from New York to Indy. Bam, bam. If he walked in the building and they announced him, I would almost have to leave because I'd be afraid at that point.
No, I'm just saying, make it happen. Let's go all in. Let's get nuts here.
That would be it. Chronic Hoosier, can't thank you enough, bro.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Catch you guys next week.
You bet. Andy Moore Honda bringing you Chronic Hoosier. Don't forget to go to andymoorehonda.com. Get more to your door. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
All right, I'm going to step out for just a second.
Oh, mercy.
All right, I'm back.
He's back. Man, I swear I cannot wait to throw this chair in the trash. It freaking hurts.
All right, here we go.
And a birdie, but you don't have to be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by K-Bello. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. It has been a full day, full of recruiting talk, without question. And that will continue as everybody waiting for the decision this Friday of Boogie Flan to see where he will take his services, whether it will be Alabama, Kentucky, or Indiana. It is, by all thoughts, a very, very close race, thought to be between Indiana and Kentucky, with Alabama hanging in there. But everything that I have found, the people I've spoken with, it's an IU lean, but when I say IU lean, it's not like Liam McNeely was. I was confident enough on that one enough after conversations that I had Friday that I posted on the Hoosier.com premium board that late that night, because it was going to be a long football day, I said, hey, I want you guys to have this. I said, but you can count on Liam McNeely being a Hoosier on Sunday. And this is not an opinion. But I can't, I don't have that yet for Boogie Fland, but it seems like it's trending in that direction. But what is that? You just take that for what it's worth. It's just, we're all going to wait and find out. I think that Indiana fans should feel good, but of course you're going to feel like crap if he doesn't. But their chances are as good and just, I think, a tick better than Kentucky and definitely over Alabama. And especially now that Liam McNeely has went ahead and committed, which that what I was expecting. If Fland does commit, I wonder if that makes it, I don't want to say more likely, but a much more a bigger possibility that they land Derek Queen, because it would make a Three Musketeers class of epic proportions. That would be a class that IU has never seen in the modern recruiting age. And by modern, you don't have to go back very far. Like I said, the biggest known class to my mind was the 89 class that Bob Knight brought in way back when I was in school, of the Grahams. Not only did that class come in with Pat Graham, Greg Graham, Calbert Cheney, Chris Lawson, Chris Reynolds, Lawrence Funderburk, and Todd Leary. Got all 7 of them. All, Funderburk left, but those guys were all integral parts of that team for 4 years. Todd hitting those shots in the Duke game, Calbert Cheney, the all-time leading scorer. But then the next year, you get Damon Bailey on top of that. So that was kind of still part of the golden age of Indiana basketball. And fun times. CJ Gunn and Caleb Banks, what are they going to do for this team? Because there's been so much talk about the recruits and who's coming in and who's already in. Kalel Ware and Mackenzie Mbako, Peyton Sparks, Anthony Walker, guys we haven't seen. There's guys we have seen in CJ Gunn and Caleb Banks. They're not sitting around twiddling their thumbs. CJ wants to be in this conversation. CJ wants to be on that floor. CJ wants to be putting up those shots that he knows he can hit. And he's very capable of that. So I know that he has been working throughout the summer to do just that, as has Caleb. Mason Williams has a great piece up on the Hoosier.com right now about those two. Go check that out. So they do everything together. Says, you see him, you see me. See, Caleb says. That's a great bond. And that's great to see, because, they're just going to be trying to make themselves better, make everyone better. So looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing these guys and their improvement. Asking if I can get an interview with Liam. You know, that's very difficult to do without going to Las Vegas, which I didn't have time to do because Montverde is, if you have to go through Montverde, they're really difficult. I will try that. Absolutely. I tell you who we do have coming up this week, besides Doyle, Greg Doyle talked about the IU piece. Later in the week, someone who was mentioned just previously on being in on the Fland to Indiana, Andrew Barth from New York. He'll be joining us. I believe that is going to be on Thursday. So look out for that. We'll see what we can find out. And it's just wait. I mean, it's like Christmas, guys. You just have to wait, except for the one thing difference between Christmas and this. You're not guaranteed to get a present. Wouldn't that suck if this was like Christmas and you show up without knowing if you're going to get a present or not? That's kind of funny. John Boy, what would we call that?
Festivus, probably.
No. Festivus has the aluminum pole for displays of strength, feats of strength, and then there's the complaining, the
airing of grievances.
The airing of grievances. And I got a lot of problems with you people.
But that's the thing. If excuse me, if Indiana fans are upset about what they don't get, then they are airing their grievances, right?
Yeah, but you can't. It can't be a grievance. Hey, the kid, whoever it is, we're going to choose what's best for them. And
of course,
what's best for them is now a combination of things. It's not just the basketball program, especially if they really believe they're a one and done, and especially if they are considered a one and done. At that point, you can go anywhere and you're going to get paid, and you're going to get paid like you have never imagined in your life, because we're talking six figures for these guys that do not start with a 1, a 2, or a 3. Think about that. Let that sit in for a minute. I know, I'm just a poor, broke, dumbass sports guy. These guys are going to kill it. And if I'd have had that kind of money at that age, though, wow. I don't know how I would have handled it. I would have had to say, serenity now. Freddie and the Truth or Friday and the Truth? Will it be Christmas or Hanukkah? Don't you get 8 straight presents for Hanukkah? I'm obviously not a follower, but I thought that's how that went. Indiana Creekwalker says Indiana will get Xbox or Drydale or Dreidel. See, again, I don't know what Dreidel is.
I think he means dreidel.
Dreidel, what's dreidel?
It's the thing that you spin around during Hanukkah. I don't know exactly what the purpose of it is, but
I've heard of a dreidel. Yeah.
And
What do you-
I don't know if it's like a game or what it is, but something like that.
Well, there's that. Either it's just a unique coincidence with it being on the same day as Indiana's Hoosier Hysteria, because it was just announced when, but he probably knew when he was going to do it before that, because his coach had been gone to Italy. And so we knew it was coming soon. But I can't thank everybody enough for being on the program today. Of course, Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. Make sure you give him a follow. Chronic Hoosier as well. John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we have absolutely no reason to be here. And believe me, we are grateful for each and every one of you. For those of you that listen on YouTube, do us a favor and please hit the subscribe button, toggle notifications, and the like button. It really helps us immensely, and we're greatly appreciative of that. I've noticed that like 70% of our listeners are not subscribers. So just hit the subscribe button. Costs you nothing, doesn't hurt you. Just make sure you don't miss any of the great content, because once the season gets kicked off, we're going to be adding tons of things all the time. So greatly appreciative to everybody today. And go out tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to have a great lineup as well. Like I said, Dylan Sin will be joining us, Greg Doyle, Rick Bozich. And then later in the week, Mr. Barth will talk more recruiting. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.